think everybody is here who wants to be here. And if people show up afterwards, I will just let them in as we go. Okay. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Joyful Writer, class number 2. I'm so excited to see you guys. Even those of you with your cameras off, I can feel you behind the picture. And I love seeing your faces. It's so fun to connect with every one of you. Oh, I'm going to let Dory in. Okay. Tonight, we are talking about the inner critic. Oh my goodness, this is a big topic. I love, Heath says, hello, friends. Hello. The inner critic is a really big, gnarly topic. It can be kind of a dark, ugly, shadow side topic for a lot of people, but we're gonna try to approach it in a lighter way tonight and not go so much into the dark tunnel, but kind of stay on the surface of the ocean waves, bobbing along. So, okay, wherever you are, I would like you to get comfortable. That's first and foremost. So get comfy, kick off your shoes, get settled back in your chair, really, feel yourself in your body, and close your eyes. I would like you to bring to mind your idea of a successful writer. And this might be anything. It might be you. It might not be you. Anything is okay. But whatever a successful writer means to you, I want you to just close your eyes and bring that to your mind. And just notice, who is the person that comes up in your mind? Is it you? Is it someone else? Is it male? Is it female? Is it neither? Are they smoking a pipe? What are they dressed like? What are they wearing? What do they look like? What do they do? Do you see them doing anything? What does a successful writer's daily routine look like? Do you see them hard at work at their desk? Are they producing lots of stuff? Are they not producing anything? Are they having a hard time with writing? How are they different from you? So whatever this picture of the quote unquote successful writer looks like, I want you to hold that in your mind. Now I'd like you to open your eyes, and I want you to grab your paper and your pencil, your pen, whatever you brought with you. And I want you to take a few minutes and write down what you saw, or also write down any thoughts that are coming to you now as you're writing. What is your idea of a successful writer? What do they look like? What do they do? What does their daily routine look like? And how are they different from you? Anything that comes to mind, just pour it out on the page. I'm going to give you 4 minutes. And one more minute. Okay, pencils down. So whatever you wrote down, and it might be good, it might be bad. Usually people have a mix of both. But whatever you wrote down, that represents your beliefs, your stories about what a writer is. And usually we don't have to say it, but what's implied is what a real writer is, right? And I hear that from writers a lot. I'll be a real writer when I write every day. I'll be a real writer when I'm paid for my work. I'll be a real writer when I'm published or when I get an agent, right? Or when I win an award. The list goes on and on. But I'll be a real writer when my picture of me matches up with this other picture that I have in my head of what a real writer is. A lot of times we don't question this. So for me, when I was getting started writing way back in the day, and before I was even writing anything, just when I really wanted to write and I felt the yearning, my idea of a real writer was someone like Jack Kerouac or Ernest Hemingway, right? They were very masculine, they were very male, they were very adventurous. They just kind of went out to the freeway and stuck a thumb out and hitched a ride and went to California, you know, or they were in Africa, like big game hunting, but they were taking a lot of risks and they were very daring. And for a lot of years, I felt like I will never really be a writer because I'm a woman and it's dangerous for me to hitchhike. And I live in a long time and I actually don't want to go big game hunting in Africa. That horrifies me. I love animals, you know. So there were all of these things that didn't match up. And I subconsciously was like, I can't be a real writer because I don't match up to this story I have going on in my head. All of us have a story in our head about what success looks like, what a creative person looks like, an artist looks like, what a writer looks like. And we don't usually question those stories. Tonight is going to be about questioning these stories. We are going to dig in and say, is this really true? Sometimes some of our things will be true. Sometimes your story has positive things. We're like, oh, a real writer writes once a week and I write once a week. So I'm a writer. That matches up. That makes me feel good. Awesome. We're not so concerned with those positive aspects. Those are great. But what we really want to look at tonight are the more negative aspects of where you feel like you're falling short, where you feel like your picture of what a writer is doesn't match the picture of you. So there's a disconnect there and there's a judgment against yourself there that you are not a writer. So think back to what you wrote down, your picture of what a writer is and how that's different from you. How do you feel in your body when you believe the stories you're telling yourself about what a writer is? And I want you to just kind of feel in, like, did you notice anything when you were writing? Did you tense up? Did you relax? Did you feel constriction anywhere? Did you feel, especially a constriction in the throat or the chest, our communication center, our heart? Did you feel like you slumped over or like you needed to kind of curl into yourself? Or did you feel expansive? Did it feel like a widening, in fact? You know, but just take note. How do you feel in your body when you believe that story of what a writer is? How do you feel in your mind? Let's check in there. Did you feel nervous? Did you feel anxious? Did you feel excited? You know, there's no wrong way to feel and there's no way you should feel. We just want to have this practice of checking in on how we feel, no matter how that is, and taking note of it. So when we have negative stories in our head of what a writer is, and when I say a negative story, I mean a story that you don't match up with as a person, so it makes you feel badly. So you have a story in your head that writers do this, I don't do that. I'm noticing when I believe that story, I feel not good in my body. I feel constricted. I feel shut down. I feel scared. I don't feel good in my mind. I feel anxious. I don't feel like I'm enough. I feel less than, right? Those kinds of writer stories. Those kinds of writer stories that we tell ourselves are linked to two big personality obstacles. And they are very different personality obstacles, but they can be present at the same time. You can move back and forth between the two. Usually somebody will have one a little bit more prevalent or a lot more prevalent over the other. But we're going to talk about these two big obstacles tonight. And before I even dive in, the main thing to remember through all of this is the obstacle you're working with is not you. This is not a flaw in yourself. When I say personality obstacle, I'm not like, well, this is what's wrong and we're going to work on it. Or this is, the bad part of you and we're going to eradicate that. That's not it at all. The personality obstacle is not you. It's just an obstacle that you're dealing with, right? It's a challenge in your path and it's making things a little bit more difficult and a little bit more sticky. But it's something that we need to address because we want to keep going forward on the path, right? So it's like a log that's fallen in the way of the path. You're not the log. It's not your fault that the log is there. You don't need to sit and go into self-judgment of like, I'm a bad person. If I was a good person, this log wouldn't be there. We're just going to see it as like, oh, this is an obstacle in our path. How can we get around it? Are we going to dig underneath it? Are we going to climb over it? Are we just going to walk around? What are we going to do? So I really want you to bring that energy to this, that we are just witnessing and gathering information. We're just watching ourselves and we're just exploring and discovering what's going on. So the two big personality obstacles are self-deprecation and impatience. We're going to start with self-deprecation. And I'm starting with self-deprecation because this is a really, really common one for highly sensitive, highly intuitive people. Almost all highly sensitive, highly intuitive people have this to one degree or another. Some have it extremely severe, and it can really be paralyzing, and it can kind of like totally run the show in your life. So self-deprecation, how it shows up in the body. People who struggle with self-deprecation tend to have rounded shoulders, right? They slump over. They tend to have poor posture. They'll have a caved in chest. They will bow their head a lot. When they're uncomfortable, they usually look down at the ground or they look at their feet, right? It's a very downward, curving over type of curling into myself posture. They will tend to suffer from shallow breathing because of this, because their diaphragm, it's always like curved over, right? So they can't get those really big, nourishing, deep breaths. They tend to breathe kind of shallow and fast. And they've tended to do this since childhood. So that feels like a normal breathing pattern to them. People who have self-deprecation usually feel a lot of loneliness. They feel isolated. They feel a lot of shame. They feel a lot of shame in just being who they are, right? A lot of times the shame will like aim itself at things like, oh, I messed up here. I did the wrong thing. I feel shame over that. But it's really just kind of an overall shame, just as a way of being. They're apologetic and they are easily intimidated. People with self-deprecation feel very intimidated by others who have a more dominant energy. It's not that like they're naturally submissive. So when they come in contact with a more dominant energy, they go into natural submission. It's more like they go into submission with everybody around them. Dominant people, non-dominant people, they're always going into submission. But really with the dominant people, they feel very uncomfortable. They don't feel like they can stand in their own power. They feel kind of like a flickery candle flame. They're extremely self-critical. People with self-deprecation have a nonstop loop running in their head of critical thoughts. And they oftentimes feel like a worm. And that sounds like a very specific thing to say, but I've talked with so many people who struggle with self-deprecation, and they say that a lot. I'm the lowest thing there is. I'm a worm, right? That feeling of like, oh, I'm just this worm crawling on the ground. That's really, really common and typical for people with self-deprecation to feel that way. People with self-deprecation had parents who had extremely high expectations of them and gave them only conditional love, right? So you will be loved if you do these things. If you do not do these things or you do not achieve these things, you don't get the love. So people with self-deprecation tend to apologize frequently. And sometimes, actually, most of the time, they will do it unconsciously. They're the people where like you run into them and they apologize to you. They will apologize 100 times during the day. They will apologize for being late when they're like 1 minute past the hour. They will apologize for not filling out every single item on the form when they didn't have to, right? They're always saying they're sorry for something. They tend to warn others of their incompetence in advance. So whenever they're trying something new, it's like they'll kind of do this thing where they warn everyone around them, like, hey, just so you know, I'm going to mess this up, right? So if they're learning how to skateboard for the first time, before they even get on, they're like, yeah, I'm going to be awful at this. Like, don't expect too much. I'm probably going to mess it up, right? They do that almost compulsively. They feel like they need to lower the expectations of the people around them. And in fact, they can be very uncomfortable with praise or compliments because when they receive praise, they feel then that an expectation has been put in place. And then they're worried, like, I'll never meet that again. Like, what if I can't come up to that standard? So it makes them feel actually very anxious to get compliments or receive praise. They tend to work from an orientation of smallness. And this is very important on the energetic level. And if you take nothing else away from self-deprecation or what it means or what it does, I want you to really remember that people with self-deprecation work from an orientation of smallness. They are not comfortable being seen in the world. They feel like they need to apologize for their existence. So everything they do, they're trying to physically and psychically pull in their energy, right? Again, highly sensitive, highly intuitive people, a lot of the time had very critical parents. So they were trying to remain invisible in their childhoods. But also because of our intuition and because of the way we seem to attract people who have toxic issues or who need a lot, who are very clingy or who are, even like psychic vampires, we will tend to want to make ourselves very small and invisible. And you will see people with self-deprecation, like this a lot. They'll put a hand over their throat. They'll have like one hand over their solar plexus, their chest, and then one hand over their throat as they're talking, like kind of protecting themselves. And then the shoulders are rounded in. Or also they might cross their legs and then like cross the leg around the leg again, like a little pretzel. I used to do that when I was, an adolescent. But they're always trying to fold in and they're always like, don't look at me. I'm not comfortable being seen. I want to pull my energy in. They really want to stay invisible and they really want to be unnoticeable. That is where they feel safe. They feel safe in invisibility. They feel safe in being not noticeable. They tend to experience unexplainable brain fog at times due to the compromised breathing because they're breathing so shallowly and they're not getting all the oxygen they need. So a lot of times people with self-deprecation will really get thrown off kilter quickly where they're like, wait, what's happening? Like, I can't remember a lot, or I don't know what I was supposed to do. Like, that's also very common. The goal of the self-deprecation obstacle, the program that's running in the brain of someone with self-deprecation, is to avoid success at all costs. Success is dangerous. Success causes people to look at you, pay attention to you. Success is something that you're going to have to expand into, right? It's very hard to work from an orientation of smallness and also step into fully what success means, right? Which is to be your big, authentic, expansive self. It's almost impossible to do those two things at the same time without having some severe psychological disturbance around it, right? Which sometimes you do see with celebrities. You can see like they're very famous, but they also feel very weird about the fame and they're not able to have all those people looking at them. And so it kind of almost like cracks them in half, right? The core wound with people who have self-deprecation is, I am not loved for who I am. That was the message they received when they were young. I am not loved for who I am. I'm loved for what I do. I'm loved for what I achieve. I'm loved for how I look. I'm loved for all of these conditional things, but I am not loved for who I am. So the identity forms around the concept of being inadequate. And whenever a human being forms an identity around something, we tend to grip onto it. Identity makes us feel safe, even if it's a negative identity, even if it's an identity we don't really want. It's hard for us to be on planet Earth, which is this ball spinning around in space, and no one really knows why we're here. And there's all this existential stuff going on up in your head. So when we see identity, we do tend to cling on to it. It's like a raft on the ocean. This is me. This is me. And this is how I'm different from everyone else. And this is how I function. And this is who I am, right? So even if it's negative, even if the identity is, I suck, I'm a worm, I'm inadequate, if we feel like we know that with certainty, like we talked about last week, the brain really likes certainty, the brain will grip onto that. So the identity forms around this concept of being inadequate. So how do we conquer self-deprecation? Because I'm sure a lot of you are like, oh my God, I have this. I work with so many clients and I tell them this and they're like, oh my God, I have this. And then with self-deprecation, they're like, and because I have self-deprecation, I suck even more. Like that's sort of the spiral to go into. So that's why I want to emphasize again, you do not suck if you have self-deprecation. A bunch of people have it. It's really common. It's one of the most common personality obstacles to have, especially in highly sensitive, highly intuitive people. And you can work with it and you can loosen the hold of it. Like I said, it's like that tree in the path. You can remove the tree from the path so that you can move forward. So the first thing, again, I want to say it again, we recognize that we are not the voice of self-deprecation. That program running in our brain, that is not us. That is not our essence. That's a program running in our brain. It's an old program. It's an old clunky program that was installed years ago. We don't need it anymore. It can go. We can take it off the machine and we'll be perfectly fine. It is not us. The next thing that we can do is to stop apologizing. And this is really hard for people with self-deprecation. But if you can make a note throughout the day to just be aware of when you apologize and try to curb that. It's going to be really hard at first. At first, you'll just compulsively do it. And you're like, oh my God, I said I'm sorry like 10 times before breakfast. I can't even believe myself. But once you start noticing it, it will get easier. Like you'll almost say it and then you'll be like, oh, no, I don't need to. I don't. And then you'll feel really uncomfortable. Like, but I want to. I feel like I want to say I'm sorry. That's my self-soothing. Oh, I never realized that before. So you'll have those moments of discomfort, but it will get easier. You want to expand yourself. At every opportunity, you want to feel your bigness in the world, right? You want to open up and step forward. So you want to use your voice. You want to sing if that's calling to you. You want to create. You want to express your opinions to other people. You want to say things out loud. You want to have that big open body language, like your arms are open, your shoulders are back, your head is up, right? You're making eye contact with people. Again, all of this is going to feel uncomfortable at first. That's okay. And you don't have to do this all on like day one. This one is maybe one of the hardest ones, but you're going to want to give up the reward you get, the reward your brain gets for being right about how much you suck. So I just want to back up here and like, let's really look at this in depth because this is kind of a tricky one. So when we have self-deprecation, one of the only things we feel certain about, one of the only ways we get self-esteem, we feel very certain and very right about the fact that we are a failure. We feel very certain and very right about the fact that we are inadequate, right? That feels good to us that we know we're right about something. And it does feel like a little reward, like, well, at least I'm right about that. And our brain really likes to be right. I mean, there's a quote somewhere, I've seen it so many places, I don't know who actually said it, but would you rather be right or would you rather be happy, right? And of course, you read that and you're like, well, I'd rather be happy. But in the moment, the brain really wants to be right. It's the same thing with self-deprecation. So catch yourself that when you are telling yourself inadequate and you're finding this evidence for why you're horrible and why you suck at things, see if you can kind of feel that little dopamine hit you get from the brain of like, and I was right. I was right about that. Like, see if you can catch that little voice in your brain feeling satisfaction that you were right. Just notice it. You don't need to push it away. You don't need to stop it, but just notice it. The next thing is you want to take risks. Taking risks is really hard for people with self-deprecation because they feel like they're going to mess it up and then everyone's going to judge them. So doing new things is really hard. So if you can start small, even like if you go to the same gas station every week and there's a different gas station right down the road, it's right there. It seems easy to use, but you've never been there. So you feel weird about going there because you've never been there. Take a risk, little stuff like that. Go to a different gas station, go to a different grocery store, park in a different parking spot, right? Move your reading chair, move something around in your house, right? Shake up the energy, take a risk, get out of your old established patterns. And lastly, this one is maybe hardest for people with self-deprecation, is to accept love. Really make an effort to be aware of when other people are trying to give you something, whether that's praise or a compliment or love or care or concern, and accept that. And that's going to be hard. People with self-deprecation have a really hard time receiving. Okay, so now we're going to move on to impatience, because impatience is its whole bucket of snakes as well, that I want to cover. And I want to give you guys time for questions tonight as well. So impatience, what impatience looks like. And I have impatience. That's one of my main big personality obstacles. It sounds like it wouldn't be that dangerous. It sounds like, oh, everybody's kind of impatient. It's fine. That's probably one of the easier obstacles. It's not. It's a really, really difficult one to work with. And it can actually be quite dangerous. You can get into all sorts of like car accidents or injuries because you're rushing along and you're too impatient. So impatience feels like and it looks like there is never enough time. The person believes at a very deep fundamental level, there's never enough time. The person's worried that life is passing by too fast. The person usually interrupts a lot in conversations. They don't mean to. It's not like sometimes it's in a rude way, but sometimes it's just in an excited way. I do this with my husband all the time. He's like, you're interrupting me again, and I'm just going to strangle you. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I have the impatience obstacle. Impatient people rush. They tend to rush through things. You can usually tell an impatient person at their computer because it almost looks like they're trying to jump into the computer screen. Like their heads are held forward and they're almost like straining toward the screen, like typing frantically. I got to get it done. I got to get it done. They have a really hard time slowing down. Even when they're having downtime on a weekend, Sunday morning, vacation, that can be really hard for them because their brain is still going very quickly and they're thinking about work tasks and stuff they should be getting done. They're very focused on being productive. Impatient people will like cross an item off their to-do list and then put one item right back on, right? So their to-do list never gets shorter. People with impatience can be snappy and irritable with loved ones. They can be hasty, abrupt, and impulsive. And they can be nervous and anxious and antsy. And you will really see it in the physical movements. Impatient people, when they're sitting, they will like kind of be like, twitching a leg, jogging their ankle, drumming their fingers on the table, checking the time. Impatient people always know what time it is and how much time is left in the day. They're very on top of the time, where people need to be. They might be scratching or like picking at things a lot, like they've always got an itch or a twitch going on, right? So people who have the impatience obstacle, their parents rush them around a lot as kids. This belief that there is never enough time came from their parents imprinting this belief on them that there is never enough time. They were taught to fear time and to be victimized by time. Time is something that runs out. Time is something there's never enough of. The thing is, children are not future-oriented. Children are not goal-oriented. Naturally, they just aren't. They are very in the present and they do not have goals. They are just here, they are being. So when kids are really pushed to have goals super early or be future-oriented super early, that impatience obstacle can really come in. So the core wound fear with impatience is, I'm not going to make it to my goal unless I move faster. Right? So there's this very real fear that if I don't speed things up, if I'm not more productive, I'm never going to make it. I'm never going to finish it. I'm never going to get to the finish line. Like the whole project is just not going to work out because I didn't move fast enough. It wasn't productive enough. So you can see how both of these obstacles come in your writing. People with self-deprecation have a lot of fear and terror around the writing itself, because it's so uncomfortable for them to write a first draft and see that it's so messy, it's so raw, it's not there yet, it's clunky or it's awkward, it's not what they want it to be, because they have that inner critic judging them. And they're terrified to share their work because they want to warn everybody of their incompetence beforehand. Like, don't even read this. It's a mess. Like, it's going to be horrible, right? So the thought of putting it out into a worldwide platform, like say something like Amazon, is really terrifying for them, because they're like, I'm going to be judged by everyone. Everyone's going to see that I'm unlovable. The secret's going to be out, right? People who have impatience, they tend to rush through projects, and they really hurry the creative process. They don't trust in the process. The creative process, especially the writing process, takes a lot of time. It can take years to come up with a finished first draft. It can take years to complete an entire book. That's pretty normal. That's really hard for people with impatience who just want to cross it off the to-do list, right? So they might rush along the characters or rush along the ideas, right? And they just kind of go full bore into it when the idea, it's not done cooking yet. You know, it's like half formed, and they're like, it's good enough, whatever. I'm just going to like take it out of the pot, put it on the plate, serve it to people. It's fine. So how do we conquer impatience? With impatience, again, it's like self-deprecation, where you're going to do things that make you really uncomfortable. So the first thing you're going to do is intentionally waste time. When I have clients with impatience, writers with impatience, they always want to know, how can I be more productive? Like, I need to produce 1,000 words a week, or I want to be writing every day. Those are my goals, you know? And I say, why don't you devote one day a week to, you know, that's just your fiction day, or that's your creative day. And maybe you don't even write it all that day. Maybe weeks go by and you never write it all on that day. You just daydream, you listen to music, you take long walks, you take long baths, you know, you read books that really inspire you. You draw, you do things that you normally think you don't have time for, and you make time for them without expecting an end result, without the goal of, this better be productive or else I'm not doing this anymore. The next thing you can do if you have impatience is learn silence. Impatient people, some of them talk a lot and talk very quickly, but they tend to be very mentally focused, and they're very focused on the exchange in a conversation, right? They feel uncomfortable just kind of sitting and being silent and letting things like absorb. Like, they're sort of like, okay, you said something, now I say something, now you say, and they're very like on top of how fast the conversation is flowing. The next thing you want to do is develop rhythm. Impatient people don't trust time. So they're always in a race against time, and they're trying to cheat time. They don't believe that time has a natural rhythm that they can be part of, and they can just kind of fall into that flow and everything will unfold naturally. Mindfulness. And I know mindfulness gets thrown around so much these days, but really being mindful in the present moment of like, okay, what am I doing right now? What do I feel like? What's around me? Instead of, you know, what am I going to be doing next week? What am I going to be doing next month? And like I said, I have impatience, so I understand this is so difficult. I will be relaxing out in the yard with my son, and he's shooting me with a water gun. And I'm sitting there like, okay, in September, I need to plan that thing, and I need to email this person. I'll email her at the end of August. Like, I'm literally thinking these things. It's crazy. But that's impatience. Like, you're always planning ahead, right? And it's this feeling of like, I have to plan ahead because I'm not safe, because time is going to run out. So the last thing you can do if you have impatience, and this is the hardest one, slow down and do less. And that, even if you don't have impatience, that's something I really want people in this class to take to heart, is so much of the time as writers, we're pushing ourselves to do more. And we do it so often, we don't even think about it. It's just kind of our mode. I should be writing more. I should be writing every day. I should be entering more contests. I should be sending more query letters. You know, I should be doing this and this and this. You just need to slow down and do less. You don't need to do more or do everything. Okay, so we're going to do another exercise. Now that you know everything about impatience, everything about self-deprecation, I want you to get out your pens and pencils, your paper, And I want you to take a few minutes and write about which one you have. And if you have both, you can write about both. You don't have to choose one. If you're like, I feel like they're actually equal. Choose, the one that you think is the most prevalent, but you can do both if you have both. And I want you to write which one you have and how does it poison your life and how does it poison your creativity? How have you seen it poison your writing? So what are the negative aspects of it? We're going to take 5 minutes. And 1 more minute. Okay, pencils down. And if any of you would like to share any of your discoveries about self-deprecation or impatience, I'd love for you to put it in the chat box. So much of the stuff that comes up is the same stuff. And a lot of the time we think like we're the only ones, like this is just me and this is real and this is happening because this is reality and I'm just clocking reality around me. And then we start to say, no, other people have the same thought loops, the same sort of toxic beliefs. It's not just me, it's just my brain. It's this human thing that happens. So if you had a good aha moment about self-deprecation or impatience, please chat it up. So the thing is, any story that comes from self-deprecation or impatience is not true, right? Self-deprecation and impatience, they have their own goals. They're trying to keep you small, right? They're trying to keep you rushing ahead because the energy behind both is fear, right? And that constant fear, it just keeps going for this goal of like, we have to avoid, we can't put ourselves out there. There's not enough time. Like you have to rush through this idea. It's not going to be good enough, right? So we hear the same things over and over and over again, and then we tend to believe them. So tonight we are going to shift out of these old stuck places. And this was the first step of getting everything down on paper where we can see it. Oh, Donna says vulnerability is risky. That's a big one, Donna. I hear that you must have self-deprecation. I hear that from a lot of people with self-deprecation. They learned to never be vulnerable when they were young. And so now as an adult, their whole system freaks out if they need to be vulnerable. Alex says, I'm an INFJ and I thought I was an off the chart J, but now I realize it's impatience, a lot of it. Are there INFJs that don't have impatience due to our built-in to-do list capabilities? You know, it depends, Alex. It's really all about the energy you're bringing to it. If you're very organized and you keep to-do lists, but it feels really good to you, it feels calm and you feel centered and focused while you're doing it, that's not impatience. Impatience feels not calm. Impatience actually doesn't feel good. And you tend to be on autopilot a lot with impatience. And that's why I always say people should take rest breaks during the day. If you have impatience, when you take a rest break and you lay down or you sit down, you'll notice your mind is racing. And you really almost might feel dizzy when you actually let yourself just sit and settle, where you're like, oh my God, like I'm just racing around in my head and I didn't even realize it. That's how impatience feels. It doesn't feel good. Let's see. Miriam says, I'm so impatient. No time to get into one idea. I have to move on to the next. And Sienna says, I can't handle to-do lists at all. It's not always a bad thing. Dory says, that's why I can't meditate. Yeah, if you have impatience, it's really going to come out during meditation. People with impatience tend to feel so uncomfortable meditating. Rose says, oof, the deprecation stuff really hit me right in the heart. And I realized that I also felt like I don't have the strength to persist in doing long-term projects. So why bother starting? And I don't even like telling people if I'm writing because I don't want them to expect me to finish it. Heath says, organization lets me keep things grounded and gives me a tether to let my mind and imagination soar. I'm an INFJ, but I definitely have much more self-deprecation. Beth says, what does it look like to have both? I mostly identify with the self-deprecation, but there are some definite impatience issues. You can have both. Yeah, you can totally have both. Usually you will, it's not that you'll move back and forth between the two. They can kind of be simultaneous going on at the same time. Casey says, I have impatience and I found a slow intro in a meditation by beginning with a moving meditation first and working my way toward traditional meditation. This helped big time. And Heath said, never thought about how I hide my chest and throat when I talk. Yeah. Oh, no, I'm glad you put that in the chat, Casey, because that's a really good point. If you have impatience, moving meditation will help you because there's so much frenetic energy in your body. And that's why it feels so uncomfortable to just sit. It's like you're this boiling pot and you just put a lid on it. And you're like, oh, this feels so uncomfortable. But if you can move and kind of get that energy going, you can go into the meditation. You don't need to just sit in one place and try to still your mind. You can do a walking meditation, something where you have that movement going on. So it sounds like, and Rose said, you know, the self-deprecation hit her really hard. A lot of times when we tell other people we're writing a book, that can feel so uncomfortable because then you might feel like she said, I feel like there's this expectation on me now. I have to finish it. Maybe people are going to follow up. They're going to ask me how it's going, and I'm going to feel self-conscious, and I'm going to feel like there's this expectation on me. I always say, when you're writing something that feels very juicy, very exciting to you, very personal, anything you have intense emotions around, don't tell other people you're writing. They don't need to know for right now. Obviously, like if you live with someone and you're like, I'm going to be holding up in the office for 3 hours every Saturday, they'll want to know what's going on. But as much as possible, keep it close, keep it private. And you can keep it private for years. I've written books and been working on them for 4 years and never told a soul. I was like, nope, I can't deal with it. It's my thing. Diane says, I delete my work after a while from the cringe feeling that kicks in. That's another thing. And we'll talk about that a little bit later in the class, but there are different anxiety trigger points during the writing process for different writers. And a lot of times that first draft, that like, oh, I can see how bad this is and I can see how raw it is, feels so uncomfortable that writers like really get triggered and go into a freak out spiral around that phase. Let's see. Emily says, I didn't even tell anyone that I was going into labor with my first baby because I didn't want to deal with others' pressure or questions or check-ins. Mm-hmm. Carrie says, I'm afraid of success and paralyzed into a state of inaction. Noam says, I have self-deprecation, but I think I also shift into impatience when I want to correct what I perceive to be my inadequacies. Yeah. Emily, it's really interesting that you said, like, I just don't even want to deal with other people. And so I'm just not going to even say that I'm in labor. People with self-deprecation, they will be like on their way to the electric chair and bump into somebody and be like, oh, excuse me. Like, I don't want to inconvenience you, like, I'm so sorry. I'm taking up so much electricity for you to execute me. Like they don't want to bother other people, but they also don't want to deal with the expectations of other people. Donna says, expectation has been my downer for years. Recently heard to change expectations to expectancy. Works beautifully. So this is great. It sounds like this really, whoever you are, you're like, I have both or I have one, but I can feel it. I'm seeing, all the different aspects in the stories. Like I said, this is not you. This is just the obstacle. This is the log on the path. So what we're going to do is we're going to do an exercise right now to shift out of this stuck place, right? This is an exercise you can use to move past the log in the path. It might help you crawl over it. It might help you dig under it. It might help you just walk around it. It might just dissolve the log into a bunch of magical pieces that fly off into the ether. I want you to get comfortable wherever you are. Settle back into your chair, whatever you're doing. Really arrive in your body. Feel yourself in your body. I want you to close your eyes. Take a few deep centering breaths. And I want you to feel the breath going down into your chest, down into your belly. And you don't need to really do anything with the breath. You can just notice that you're breathing. As you breathe in and out, breathe in and out of your heart. I want you to take both of your hands and place them over your heart. And feel your heart beating. Feel that connection between your hands and your heart. Breathe into your heart and just feel your heart beating. Now I want you to visualize a tiny green glowing star where your heart is. It's a beautiful green. It's the color of new spring leaves on a tree. And this tiny green glowing star is three-dimensional, and it's turning, it's radiating light in every direction. And it's a beautiful green light. And it's going out in front of you, back of you, to your sides. As it turns, it's like this little disco ball star, right? It's just shining light everywhere. Now, I want you to bring someone to mind who you dearly love. This can be a person. This can be a pet. This can be an animal or a pet that you had as a child. An animal or a person who you dearly love, who you love unconditionally, and who you know unconditionally loves you. And I want you to just see them and feel how much you love that person or animal. and just feel the goodness and the heart love in that person or animal, and how generous they were with you, and how accepting they were of you, and how much they loved you. So I want you to feel the flowing of that love between you and that person or that animal. And as you feel that flowing, that green light is glowing brighter and brighter. And there's light pouring in and radiating out at the same time from that green glowing star in your chest in all directions, above you, below you, down into the roots of the earth, even if you're in a high rise, up into the sky, in every direction. And as that light is pouring in, and as that light is flowing out, it's cleansing and it's clearing your system. It's cleansing and clearing you of all heart blocks, all old stories, all old painful thoughts, all old false beliefs. It's just clearing them right out. And it might look different to all of you. Some of you might see like a vacuum cleaner. Some of you might see a broom. Some of you might just see it being dissolved. However it shows up, that's okay. But you see that stuff being cleared out and released and let go. You see it coming out of your body. And as this green light is flowing, you see that it's restoring your balance. It's restoring the balance of your heart, and it's restoring the balance of your energetic system. It's restoring the balance of your body. And that green light is flowing everywhere in your body, up into your head, down your arms, your fingers, down to your legs. It's generating soothing energy everywhere it goes. It's healing you everywhere it goes. And as you're feeling this, I want you to say to yourself inwardly, I am enough. I am loved. I am worthy and always have been. I am love itself. Now I want you to see the rays of light connecting you to other people. And as you look around, you see that those rays of light are connecting you to the other people in this group. And you can see their heart stars. And you can see the beauty and the goodness and the love in all the people in this group. You can see their innocence. You can see their hopes. You can see their excitement at being alive. You can see this inner child in each one of them. And it's so cool. You can see what an amazing person each person in this group is. And you see the light from your heart connecting with the light from their hearts. And as you make that light connection, you're going to send them love down that pathway. And as you send them love, you feel that they're sending you love back. And you're going to open your heart star and you're going to receive that love. And you know that it is given with no strings attached. And it is given in order to be of service to you and because they are generous. Now, I want you to see the rays of light connecting you to your family, to your friends, to the people in your neighborhood, even the people that annoy you. All the strangers you pass on the street, or maybe you see them outside passing by your window, until your rays of light are connecting you with the entire world. And it feels safe. You don't have to worry about anything negative coming down that pathway because you are protected. Your heart is taking care of it. The heart light is filtering out anything you don't need. There's always a filter in place. It's only bringing you the good stuff and it's only sending out the good stuff. So I want you to bring that light back in now. You can disconnect from the entire world and the people in your neighborhood and your family and your friends. I want you to just stay with the people in this group, and I want you to take a visual snapshot inside your mind of how it looks, how you feel. Just one quick snapshot, like you're taking a screenshot. And I want you to take that screenshot and lock it into your memory. Whatever that looks like for you. Maybe you're opening up a file drawer. Maybe you're putting it on a hard drive. Maybe you're putting it in a cabinet in your mind. But you're locking that into your memory so you can use it whenever you need it. Then I want you to breathe into your heart, center yourself again. All your light is coming back to you. You're just you inside your own energy system again. And that light, that green light is cooling down. It's flowing back into your heart. We're putting protective boundary around you. One more deep breath, and then we're going to open our eyes. So that is called a heart star visualization. And you can use that anytime you feel the old stories coming up, the anxiety coming up, those thought loops, fear, anything that makes you feel uncomfortable or not good in your body or in your own energy system. You can use that exercise. You can take out your snapshot. If you need it really quick, if you're in traffic and you're like, I can't sit here and do a whole meditation, you can go into your memory and take out that snapshot and you can use it. So now that we've done that exercise, we're going to do one more and see what comes up for us. I want you to take out your pens and pencils and your paper. Now that you're sitting in that juicy, delicious heart energy, and I want you to ask yourself, what kind of writer am I? What do I need to feel nourished as a writer? What's a writing routine or non-routine that might feel good to me? How can I better give myself what I need as a writer? You don't need to answer every question, but you can see the focus is, what do I need? What do I need to feel good? What might feel good to me? What do I need to feel nourished? And I want us to take 5 minutes, write whatever comes out, no judgment. One more minute. Okay, pencils down. I would love to hear about what you guys came up with for what you need to feel nourished as a writer. Sienna said, I write the damn story already. I've had that too, Sienna, where I'm like, just get it done already. This is killing me. It's a long and torturous birth. So I want you to take a few moments to feel into your body. How do you feel now? What's the difference after you really opened up that heart connection and you moved into your heart space? Do you feel more relaxed? Do you feel calmer? Do you feel like mentally things are different? Things look a different way? Whatever you wrote down, that's your intuition speaking. That's you talking to you. You already know what you need. You already know what feels good to you. So much of the time we rush ahead and we override what we know because we're just so used to doing things that feel bad to us because we tell ourselves we have to or other people expect it. So like I said, if you came up with any aha moments, like please throw it into the chat. Donna says, I have to laugh at my fears. Oh, that's a good one. A lot of times when we get into a fear space, we take things very, very seriously. If you noticed you're losing your sense of humor at any time, you can be sure that fear and anxiety is in the room, right? Or you're very stressed, you're exhausted. Humor is the first thing to go. Heath said, feeling calm and content, ready to support myself in my own work. We both deserve it after so long. Ro says, I'm much less blocked with exploration writing to unravel some issue in my head. Had the thought of maybe finding a way to work that into my fiction so it flows better. Oh, that's nice. Pam says, I need to know I'm connecting with people. Ro, and for all of you, there's a really great book. If you guys have taken my classes before, you know, I'm going to recommend Mark Matusik. But he has a book called Writing to Awaken. And it's all sorts of exercises. That's all it is like really digging down into that psychological stuff that's going on for you and helping you to get back into better flow. And Pam, I need to know I'm connecting with people. That's a big one. And that is kind of a big conflict with people with self-deprecation. People with self-deprecation tend to really want to be of service to others. That's a core need for them. They want their writing to help. They want their writing to serve the world in some way. So they really want to connect, but then there's this terror of connecting as well. So it's like this push-pull feeling. Going forward in our writing lives, what would be most helpful is if we can use our intuition like we did just now to explore what we need as writers, what makes us feel good and what brings us fully alive, instead of getting caught up in the mental loops of what we should be doing. Donna says author's name again, please. You know what? I'll send it out in the recommended reading too. It's Mark, M-A-R-K is his first name, and his last name is Matusik, M-A-T-O-U-S-E-K. And the book is Writing to Awaken. He's got a bunch of books out. He's on Amazon. He does writing retreats. He's great. If you can ever go to a retreat with him, I highly recommend him. But he does a lot of stuff with memoir writing. For those of you who are writing memoirs, he does online classes too that are really good. I think they're kind of long. They're like 6 to 9 weeks, but they're really good. Yeah, Beth said Mark Matusik. Yeah, it's good. Yeah, I have a lot of students who have done Writing to Awaken. It's a really intense experience, but you can find out so much about yourself. It's nuts. It's really great. So if we can shift from away from the mental back into our intuition, which all of you as highly sensitive, highly intuitive introverts, this is your jam. This is your natural flow. You're going to feel better overall. Your creative channel, it's going to start to widen. The more pressure we put on ourselves, the more we get caught up in those self-deprecation, impatience, mental thought loops, the channel gets constricted. Not very much can come through, right? we can't hold very much. We can't be the vessel to birth out what's trying to come out. We really want to widen that channel. We want to expand. When we use things like the heart star exercise, or journaling, like we've just been doing, sometimes even just simple journaling can open you up and help you expand. And that's what we're going for, is that feeling of expansion. That's when your intuition is going to come in. That's when that third eye talent you have is going to come in, because you can see the bigger picture. You get that wide angle view. So you can connect with your heart anytime you hit the different anxiety points during the writing process. And there are a bunch, and everybody's going to have their own. The point of being an artist, the point of discovering yourself as a writer, it's not to go online and find a bunch of formulas and find a bunch of ways that other people are doing it and try to make yourself do it that way. You being a writer is about you discovering yourself as a human being. It's you finding out how you work. And that is more uncertain territory. It feels a little bit dicier and riskier, but it's more sustainable. So part of that is figuring out which parts of the writing process really trigger anxiety for you. It's different for everyone. So I'm just going to give you a quick overview. And if you guys have questions, please throw them in the chat. Like, I can answer questions as I'm talking about this, because I want to make sure you get your questions answered if you have them. So one of the first trigger points is the first draft. A lot of writers just have a lot of problems writing the first draft. First drafts are messy. They come out of you completely unpolished, sometimes in lots of little bits that don't make sense, right? I talk to a lot of writers who are like, I saw this scene and then I saw this scene. I don't even know if they're related. I don't even know if they're the same book. This is driving me crazy. There's so much uncertainty and unknowing that if you have control issues, or you feel very unsafe, if you don't know things, if you hate surprises, like you need to plan everything, that first draft is going to be really hard for you. Your anxiety is going to get triggered. You're going to get stressed. That's when the self-deprecation is going to come up. That's when the impatience is going to come up. These personality obstacles come up when you're stressed, when you're anxious, exhausted, burned out. That's when they really, really rear their ugly heads. So if you have first draft trigger points, you're just going to want to be aware of that during your first draft. Maybe use the heart star exercise every time you sit down to write, or even just the visual snapshot we took, right? Or a few breaths where you center yourself in your chest and you bring the energy down from your head. Another trigger point that's quite common is revisions, right? So during the first draft, a lot of people get the, I call it the "this is shit" thought loop. So like you're writing, like I have it, like you're writing and the whole time you're writing, like, this is shit, this is shit, this is shit. Like it's horrible. When you do revisions, it's more of a like, this is a total mess and I'll never be able to clean it up thought loop, right? So there's a lot of overwhelm that comes in. So if you're a person who feels easily overwhelmed, right? Or like too much energy coming at you is just too much, like multitasking is just a non-option for you. And that's me. Like I can't multitask. I can't have a bunch of tabs open on my computer. I have to do things one at a time, which sucks because I have impatience. So you can see how that goes. But you're going to really get triggered during revisions. You're probably going to feel like this is too big. It's too messy. I'm never going to make sense out of it. Your anxiety is going to get triggered. Those personality obstacles are going to come up. If you have self-deprecation, it's very probable one of your anxiety trigger points is going to come up during the sharing process, right? So you've made it through the first draft. You've made it through some revisions. Maybe it's not done yet, but you've done a pretty good job of polishing it, to the best of your ability at this point in time. And now it's time to share it with someone. Either, like actually getting feedback from beta readers, or even just showing it to a friend, right? If you are blogging and you're putting stuff out online, right? That's sharing. Anytime you take some of your writing work, you hand it to someone else, whether in person or virtually, and you say, hey, I wrote this, read it. It's here for you to read. That sharing, those trigger points are going to come up, that anxiety, right? So the thought loop there that people have is, I will be judged, right? And of course, that comes right hot on the heels. I will be judged and found unworthy. I will be judged and everyone will find out I'm unlovable. So when you feel that coming on, again, you can use the heart star exercise. It's really nice to move into your heart space at that point, because your heart space, your heart energy, you're not just trying to send love out to other people, but you can also use it to wrap yourself in love, right? And this goes if you feel a little bit lost at sea in your relationships, or a little bit like something just happened between me and this other person and I'm not sure what, and I'm really freaked out about it, right? You can move into your heart space and you can send yourself love. Another part of the process, and this might be after your work has been out there in the world for a while, maybe you are published, people are reading your stuff, right? You're getting reviews. It's criticism and comparison, right? So the thought loop there is, I'm not enough, I'm unlovable. It's very close to like, I will be judged. It's almost like I already have been judged though, right? Criticism is very, very difficult for highly sensitive, highly intuitive writers. It sometimes gets better. I have found that most writers have a belief that they need to get a thicker skin, like they need to get tougher and kind of battle through it. So I've known writers who are, they're like, I make myself read every bad review, or I have a beta reader friend who's highly critical of my work, but I keep giving it to her anyway because I want to just toughen up and I want to be able to take the criticism. You don't need to do that to yourself. You really don't. That is a dysfunctional belief that it's not okay that we are as sensitive as we are. And we sensitive people usually have this in many areas of our life, right? You will talk to highly sensitive people who are like, I made myself go to the football game. I made myself go to the party. I made myself work at that job where I had to work 90 hours a week. Because there's something in us that's always believed it's not okay for me to be as sensitive as I am. I have to have this thick skin and I have to grow this thick skin. You don't have to grow a thick skin. It's totally okay for you to be as sensitive as you are. Don't read your reviews. You don't have to. There's really not ever constructive criticism in reviews. And the thing is, if you have self-deprecation, even reading good reviews can sometimes be not so helpful for you if you feel like an expectation is being put into place. You might get that little shot, that little adrenaline hit of like, ooh, someone liked my book, they give it 5 stars, but that quickly wears off. And it's not anything that you really, really need to take with you. So like with my books, I don't read any of the reviews anymore. I just don't. There's nothing there for me. It's really, really cool if someone loved my book and left me a lovely review. I guess it's okay if someone hated my book and thinks I'm dumb. Either way, it's not really about me. The person had an experience with my work. I left the room long ago, right? So if your work is your child, it's kind of like, okay, your child has grown up and gone off to college now and then graduated and moved away and they have their own set of friends and they're having their own experiences and you don't need to be part of it anymore. And I know that might sound weird, especially if you are in that first draft stage where you're like, I feel like it's still my baby and I'm really working with it. You are going to get to the point where it's separate from you. And that's really the point of your creative process, is you are trying to create something that comes from inside of you. It starts out as a part of you, but you're creating it so that it will be separate from you and you can send it out into the world. Donna says, how to find beta help. Donna, that's something you could post about in the group. And if any of you are looking for help, use the group. Like if you're looking for beta readers, or you're looking for an editor, or you're looking for a cover designer, or you're looking for a coach, like whatever you're looking for, throw it in the group. Because that's what we're here for. And we'll try to help you if we can. INFJs and INFPs love to help. So you're in a group of people who would love to help. So what we're trying to do is use our intuition and our heart connection to discover our trigger points, our ways of self-soothing, our sources of nourishment, and our heart connection. A lot of times when we check in with ourselves and we ask ourselves, like in this exercise, what is a routine that would work for me? What are sources of nourishment that would work for me? We do find that what works for us is not the norm, right? A lot of highly sensitive, highly intuitive writers do not do well writing every day, for instance. And I don't know how many of you have tried to force yourself to write every day. I used to years ago, and it really didn't work for me. And I felt very badly about myself, and I would just end up berating myself. But you don't have to write every day. Like I say, I always try once a week. And I think Louis posted about this in the Facebook group, what do you do? Like, how do you get on a schedule? Like, how do you make yourself just do it? If you're feeling that inertia, you really need to check in about the inertia. Sometimes you just need to back off and rest. And I know that's hard to hear, especially if you're really being sort of mean to yourself in your mind about it, where you're like, well, I've rested enough and I'm lazy enough. Like, I really need to get this done. Anything you're working on, any creative work you're working on, it's going to have its own timeline. It's going to have its own schedule. So please just try to go with it. And if you guys have questions, like, please post them in the chat, because I could just talk forever. That's one of my things. I'm a talking machine, so I could just keep talking forever. If you guys have questions, please post them in the chat and I'll get them answered. Every creative work is going to be different. Every creative work is like a child. Patricia says, I once was on a roll and wrote a story a lot of people liked, and I sent it to my cousin, a literature professor, and she completely reorganized it. The experience shocked me and completely shut me down. It made me concerned that I couldn't accept criticism feedback. Oh, that's interesting. Patricia, that actually sounds like a boundary issue. If you sent it to her and you were like, here's my story, you know what? Do what you will with it. Take the red pen to it. I'm open. Like, cut it up, paste it back together. You do it, sister. If you said all that and then you got it back and you were shocked, I might be like, well, I don't know. You kind of like gave her that intention. But if you just sent it to her like, hey, I just want you to read this, wondering what you think, and she did that, that's a boundary issue. That had nothing to do with you not being able to accept criticism or feedback. That is also very common for highly sensitive, highly intuitive people. We have a lot of trouble with boundaries. We also tend to be very hard on ourselves about our trouble with boundaries. It's okay if you have trouble with boundaries. A lot of times people will cross boundaries with us, and we either don't see that they've crossed a boundary. We'll like feel it in our body. That's what we're like. I feel kind of uncomfortable. I feel uneasy. I don't feel good about that. But then we turn it back on ourselves and we internalize it. We're like, well, it must be me. It must be my issue. Like, I'm not flexible enough. I'm not accepting enough. I'm not grateful enough, right? That's really, really common for highly sensitive, highly intuitive people. So much of the time, we have people in our lives who cross our boundaries constantly. And we're kind of always letting them because we feel guilt, or we feel like, oh, it's okay, or they really need the help. And it's this pattern in our lives. But it's not your fault, and it's not something you're doing wrong, right? In that scenario you just sent me, it sounds like that was her issue, though. Like, she just decided that that was the way it should be. So that's not you. It's not that you can't accept criticism or feedback. That was her thing. And that was another thing. I was talking with an INFJ client this week, and I really wanted to, I know this is a class on writing, but with INFJs and INFPs, it's like all the energy stuff comes in too. It's important to remember that the quality of your energy is different than most other people's energy. It really is. And because you're inside of yourself, you don't usually clock it. You are really, you feel really good to other people. Other people really like being around you. It's because you actually listen to them. You actually see people. You pause in what you're doing and you look at people and you give them your full attention. And a lot of times you open your heart to them. That's very rare, and people don't usually find that. So what happens is, probably your entire life, you've had issues like that, where you're like, gosh, like, people just kind of like come in all the time and tell me their life stories, and they're like, they cling to me, or they feel overwhelming, or they do things I didn't ask for, they violate my boundaries, and I'm not really sure why this is happening or what's going on, and it just feels invasive and overwhelming. And that's why a lot of times we have a closed down heart as intuitive, empathic people, because we're like, it's just too much. I'm just going to put this big wall up and I'm going to isolate myself because I can't handle it. Patricia says, thanks, you nailed it. Boundaries. And I am an INFJ. Yeah. So the thing is, and actually, I read this on one of my friend's blogs. She wrote about boundaries, and it was such an aha moment for me where she said, I've thought this entire time that boundaries were this wall I had to put up, and then I had to hide behind it. I didn't realize that it was just me deciding that I'm in charge. And when I read that, I was like, she put into words something that I've been trying to articulate to my clients and students for years, because so many of us with boundaries, because of our intuition and because our energy fields are so porous, it's really hard for us to know what a boundary is. So we do end up doing this thing where like we let people in and we let people in and we're feeling more and more uncomfortable. And then all of a sudden it's like, I have to put this big wall up and hide behind it because you won't go away and you're not picking up on cues. And I've been trying to give you all these hints and you're not taking the hints. It's really, really hard for us. Emily says, yes, boundaries. Will feel it, but think it's me. I take too much responsibility. I should have known better. The boundaries part of your last class was eye-opening for me. And oh my, yes, I let other people be in charge and feel like I have to go along with it. Yes, and Sienna says, boundaries are how I teach others how to treat me. Exactly, Sienna. And that doesn't mean that you have to teach people in a forceful way or an aggressive way. A lot of INFJs and INFPs feel weird about that because they feel like I have to aggressively assert my boundaries. You can gently teach people how to treat you. You can teach people how to treat you with kindness and compassion. People might mess up. You can give them a second chance, right? It doesn't have to be this big aggressive conflict all the time, which is something we really hate. Beth says, that makes me feel better about the few times I've ghosted someone. You just described that feeling so well. Beth, if you ghosted someone, I'm going to say that they probably needed to be ghosted. INFJs and INFPs don't ghost people lightly. And if we do, it's usually an act of self-preservation. So cut yourself some slack on that one. Casey says that idea of slowly letting people in more and more, I think that leads to the door slam for me when I just can no longer be around the person anymore, though it's less a slam and more a disappearing act. Yep, we've all done it. And that's because, and I think we were talking about this actually in the Facebook group. We are so good at taking the emotional temperature of other people in the room that if someone's facial expression changes just the slightest bit, we see it. We're like, oh, I said the wrong thing. They're uncomfortable. They feel insecure now. Like, we can always see the mask someone is presenting to the world and behind the mask. We see it at the same time, and we don't have to try to do it. It just happens. So when we meet someone and get to know them, we see all of them very quickly. We're like, oh, I can see that they're insecure in this area, and I can see that they're seeking approval in this other area, and I can see they're kind of cold and closed down here, but I see that this really lights them up. Like, we just get all of that, right? So we can very easily tell when the person needs space, or they don't want to talk about a certain subject, or it seems like they're getting irritable, right? And we back off. Other people can't do that. That's really hard for us to even understand because it comes so naturally to us. It's like breathing. That's what we do. Most other people can't do that. They have to rely on like the really out front mannerisms and expressions people use, and people explicitly saying, I'm tired and I need to go home now. So just keep that in mind. And if you are an INFJ or an INFP, like I said, the quality of your energy, it feels really good to other people. Other people feel really seen in your presence. They feel really loved. So they're going to want to keep coming back for more. And the thing is, if you let them keep coming back for more and you don't monitor how much they're taking, it's going to be like you're a buffet. It really is. And then you're going to get resentful because you're like, I'm not a buffet, right? This is not Las Vegas and I'm not the buffet. Like, you need to take one plate and go and stop coming back to me for your energy. INFJs and INFPs, we don't use other people to generate our energy. We generate our energy within ourselves, right? And it usually takes us some time. We usually need like 2 or 3 days or a whole week where we're like, I'm just in turtle mode. Like, I'm reading and I'm sleeping and I'm just kind of chilling out and I'm generating this energy I need just to get back to base level. And then we're generated and we're back at a good level. The very next day, someone comes along and they'll zap it all up in 2 hours and they'll take it and not even feel guilty about it or even know that anything happened. They're just like, oh, thanks, I was really hungry. I'm so glad I visited the buffet. So the thing is you have to be aware that you're not a buffet. And you have to put the signs out that like, this isn't a buffet. You can order one thing off the menu. It costs this much. This is how much it means to me. If you order that thing off the menu, I'll bring it to you. And then you have to give me some sort of payment. There has to be an energetic exchange. So many highly sensitive, highly intuitive writers and introverts, we give all the time. And that's the last thing I'll say tonight is the creative process takes a ton of energy. It takes a lot of energy to write things. Even tonight, these journaling exercises we did, you might get off this session and feel tired or depleted or kind of hungry or kind of crabby, right? Because you took a lot out of you writing all this stuff down. Like writing is a courageous act. And it's also a rigorous act. It's like physical exercise. It takes a lot out of you. So if you are trying to write a book, if you are trying to write a blog, right? If you're trying to create some sort of piece of writing work and put it out into the world, you're going to really need to be aware of your energy and who you're giving it away to and how you're conserving it, because you need that energy to work on that creative process. You need that energy to pour it into that creative process. And that's what it really comes down to. It's not about being productive, having to-do lists, doing the formulas you see online. It's about how you feel in your energy, how much of your energy you're giving away, how much you're keeping, how much you're pouring into your creative process, what your energy feels like when you're creating, how you can widen the channel to bring in more energy, to generate more energy. And we're going to talk about all of this stuff more in depth next week as well. I'm going to send out the link for the Zoom silent writing session tomorrow. So I'll see you guys at 10:30 a.m. And let's see, I'm also going to send out another challenge this week. And if any of you have any questions, you can also email me. Like if you're like, I have questions, but I feel weird about putting them in the Facebook group, I totally understand that. You can just email me one-on-one. I'm here. I check my email often. I'll be checking it really often for the month of May. So thank you guys so much. It was so lovely seeing you tonight. Oh, and I'll have the replay up tomorrow. It takes a while for the video to process, so probably tomorrow afternoon. But yeah, if we didn't cover something, like, also feel free to post about it in the Facebook group. And you guys don't have to stick to writing. Post whatever you want in the Facebook group. Like, I'm telling you, you are amongst your kinfolk. Like, these people are accepting and they're all weirdos and they love it. Gwen says, thanks, Lauren. Your words really resonated with me tonight. Oh, good. I'm glad, because as I'm talking, I'm always like, God, I'm the weird one. Like, these people must think I'm so weird. And then I get in the Facebook group and I'm like, no, they're all INFJs and NFPs. I don't think they care. I think they're into it. Let's say, I'll do one last question. Alex said, Lauren, do you mean people will just take your energy outright, or do you mean they will take it from your generosity or helpful actions, which in turn takes your energy? Both. Both, Alex. People will show up like mosquitoes and they will just drink whatever blood is available. Emily says, love all around. Thanks, Lauren. Yeah, thank you guys so much. I'll see you tomorrow in the silent writing session. Like I said, if you have questions, email me, post them in the Facebook group. Have a great night. Bye.